All right, folks. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for everyone to being here and your time. I appreciate it. I hope all is well with everyone. So Russ, you can't vote, but we'll see what happens to others, but you can join in, just can't vote. You'll plug your
Tony just arrived, so now Rick Hoover cannot vote.
all right, Rick and Russ. All right. Okie doke. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Okay, Mr. Yeah, you, Ed. Sorry, Barb, you second? Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Okay, agenda is approved. Public comment period for items not on the agenda. Anyone, members of the committee or anyone in the audience have any public comment? Rick, you got anything? Barb, you okay? Oh, okay. All right. Item number 4, approval of minutes from the February meeting. I hear a motion.
David Zelenak, so moved.
Thank you.
Larry Tobias, second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. All right, financial. Lisa.
Right, Lisa Corey, Finance Manager for the PPRTA. I am reporting the month of December and the whole year of 2023. So we did finish out the year above the amended budget, which was 150 million. So we exceeded that by $4,289,544. So that's great news. For December, we were above December's budget by $233,052 or 1.7%. Looking at December of 23 compared to December of 22, we actually collected less by $331,693.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions, Lisa? Go ahead, Larry.
I talked to Lisa last month concerning the financial reports. And the question I have is concerning the reports that are the last 3 or 4 pages that she has. Those reports are only through December 31st, 2023. And in talking to both the city and the county, as I talked to you last month, they both indicated that they've had quite a bit of cash flow, or I shouldn't say cash flow, but payments that have been submitted for PPRTA. And since we don't have a report past December 31st, those numbers are not showing up, which in turn, the percentage of what they have spent on a particular project is still kind of low. And so you had indicated that this probably won't be updated until like May. Is there any way that we can get it updated sooner to give a little better perspective of, what is being spent?
So the audit is scheduled for the end of April. So we're still allowing 2023 expenses to come through for anything that anyone has had for invoicing in 23. So I won't have a final until after the audit for the whole year of 23. But next month we'll have January numbers. So then you'll see everything that's happened in 24.
Okay. But the actual 23 numbers really won't be available then until after the audit is completed.
Yeah, not the final ones. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and I guess on that note, I had made a comment to Rick or someone a couple months ago. I think that it's been a while since we've done it as a committee, but maybe we should look at being as we're ending RTA 2, maybe we should look at some of those ongoing projects that aren't closed out. And just so that we know the status of them. For me, when I would look at financial reports and you see something that was a 21 project or 22 project and it's still open, I think it's important that we understand why that's happening. Mark Shuffle is one, for instance, you know, where we pull the money and we're still now working on it. But I think it might be good at some time, maybe after you get the final, is that we just have a brief, not necessarily detailed overview, but at least we understand why certain projects are still open and being worked on. And my opinion, you can share your opinion if, when we get to that topic, but it's just something that when I look at the financial reports, I ask the question to myself about. So anyway, any other questions for Lisa? I tried explaining to someone today, this is when you've been out of school too long. Some of the 1 cent tax that we collect is, when I looked at the budget and I see the 150 million or the amount of money that we collected, I tried to figure out how many pennies that was. And I had to figure out how to multiply that on my calculator because I couldn't do it in my head. I mean, that's pretty damn simple, but it was like, what?
How many tons of pennies?
1 billion, 10 million or 5 million or something. I don't know, some kind of crazy number of pennies, but anyway, thank you. Thank you, members of the community. All right. Item number 6, capital maintenance project, City of Colorado Springs. Gail.
So before we begin, Mr. Chair, this is Carlos Perez with the CTAB. I'm going to need to recuse myself from this item. I work in the VMS industry, and think out of abundance of caution, I'm going to go ahead and recuse myself from voting on these items.
On
And
the
I don't know if that
Colorado,
affects
of
any-
Colorado Springs.
Yeah, the Colorado, well, it's
Okay.
it's item number 4.
Okay.
And I don't know if that affects any of the alternates who could vote on this, but I will be recusing myself.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Ms. Gail.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the CAC, Gail Sturtevant, City of Colorado Springs. The city has a short list this month. You guys are all welcome for contracts. I know. The first one is an A-list project. It is, map is included in your packet, is for the Tut Boulevard extension. This is for construction contracts. I will point out that Rick is passing out an updated packet to the City of Colorado Springs for this particular contract, because when we wrote the memo and put it in, we had received bids for multiple contractors, but it was unclear if the first 3 low bidders actually met the utility qualification items. So what you received in your packet had the 4th place bidder. I'm pleased to announce that the lowest bidder actually is determined to be qualified to provide for the utility work. So we would intend to award the contract in the amount of $1,682,972.10 to Elite Surface Infrastructure. And that will complete this project once this construction is done. The city's second contract is for the city's PPRTA crack seal program. In 2021, we went through an RFP process. We selected Seal Coat Solutions. This is actually a task order for 2024 services to provide crack seal services as required up to a dollar amount of $1.2 million. The third one contract is for transit on-call concrete services. Because of FTA clauses, this was procured a little bit differently than what we would do for some of our other on-call concrete. They did go through an RFP process. They had 3 respondents. 2 were determined to be successful. This would be putting a base year contract in place that could have 4 option years for renewal. In 2024, also with this action, we would be adding up to a $250,000 effort, which would be split $50,000 to PPRTA and $200,000 to FTA, both to Lucky Dog Contracting and Illumina Enterprises to provide those. And really what they do for transit is if they need it, because everything with transit has to be ADA compliant, as we try to do with all of our pedestrians, but if they need to have rapid response to go do ADA improvements related to bus stops or a back path to bus stops, they need to have this service available to them. And the city's fourth contract is for variable message boards. The city went through an RFP process. There were 4 respondents. The city intends to put contracts in place with all 4 respondents. This will be a base year contract with the option with 4 option years. This contract is going to be available citywide for all city departments to be able to go and use if for some projects that need variable message boards. And if we would need some for PPRTA activities, we'd be issuing a task order for these variable message sites to be incorporated on PPRTA related projects only. So those are the city's 4 contracts, and I'm happy to address questions.
Anyone got any questions for Gail? Okay, anybody, excuse me, anybody online? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the contracts as revised?
Hang just one second.
Okay,
Carlos, is this number 4? Is this the one said that you were going to excuse yourself?
Yes, sir. Yeah, number 4. Well, I don't work for any of these companies. I work for a company that supplies variable message boards. And out of abundance of caution, I don't know what's on here specifically, but I'm going to recuse myself from number 4.
But 1 through 3, you will vote on. Is that correct?
If there's a motion to bifurcate this, I saw these as kind of fairly non-controversial, so I don't need to do that. But if the board, the rest of the committee here feels that would be appropriate, I would have no objections to that.
How do you want to handle that?
I don't think we need to bifurcate. We're not close enough that it would make a determination one way or the other. So I would vote or recommend that we not bifurcate it at this point. Does anybody have a problem with that? Anybody online have a problem with that?
Nope.
Okay, so we'll just go that way. We've got plenty of votes. It's not close to a quorum, so. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the city's contracts as revised. Any further discussion?
Jim, this is Cindy. I didn't hear a motion. Did we have one?
Oh, I thought we did. Okay, well, do I have a motion to approve the city's contracts? Tony Joya. A second. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Cindy, for keeping us straight. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Nope.
All right, very good. Thank you. Okay, item 6B, county. Josh? Oh, I'm sorry. City, line item transfer, sorry.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Gail Sturdy again with the City of Colorado Springs. The city is proposing to do a line item transfer to move $10 million from the UPR railroad main line over Fontenaro Bridge Replacement Project and move it into the Roadway Safety and Traffic Operations Project program. The purpose of doing this would really to be able to have continuous funding for construction for the Mark Shuffle Road Improvement Project, which is currently underway, and also to advance the engineering for Dublin Boulevard between Peterson Road and Mark Shuffle Road. I will mention to you, our intent for this is not due to cost changes. It's actually to continue additional work that would be done. On the Mark Shuffle Road construction project right now, if you've been out in that area, you will see it's going extremely well. Our contractor is moving very efficiently and effectively, so much so that I will be out of money to be able to continue to have construction be continuous. So one of the things that we'd like to do and will likely be bringing to the CAC and the board next month would be a change order to keep Kramer going really through the end of the year until we can get into PPRTA 3 money. The other thing I'd like to do, because the city wants to add Dublin Road between Peterson Road and Mark Shuffle as a phase or a portion of this Mark Shuffle Road project. To be able to do that, we actually need to advance the engineering and get it caught up with the rest of Mark Shuffle Road. So it should just continue from the south to where it is to the north and pick up that Dublin piece as we get into construction. So that's really why I'm doing this line item transfer now. So I have those funds in place to be able to address significant roadway safety and traffic operation issues that we're experiencing within the city of Colorado Springs. I will note that even with this is a significant change, that, you know, we are still anticipating to be able to fund all of our A-list projects. And I think that's really the key of the tenet of being part of PPRTA. But I think it's also in our best interest to keep good work going as strong as we possibly can now and not be in a position where we're going to have to pay a contractor to demob and have him remob in 4 or 5 months later. So anyway, that's why I'm asking for the CAC's consideration and recommendation for the board for this line item transfer.
Go ahead, Tony.
I know it says on here that you do anticipate that sufficient funds for the Fontanero Bridge replacement will still be available. That's a pretty big chunk taken out of it.
It is.
How are,
Yeah. So
how are you anticipating?
let's talk about that, the finance, and I have had a discussion with PPRTA staff on this. So, well, there's kind of two things. Let me take a step back and talk about PPRTA too. The project itself, or the A-list, only includes the main line bridge. And we had been realizing we have to do the siding bridge. We had been talked about using emergency bridge fund. In 2021 and 22, because of where we were with revenues, I kept putting money in that project to cover the siding bridge because it is still going to need to be done. I'm really now taking that money out now to reuse it for things that we need now, knowing that I'm going to have revenues. I'll come back and talk about that. Can replenish that or other things that may be needed for the PPRTA program. The other thing I have is an option, even in PPRTA 3, we have an emergency bridge fund still. So if I still need monies for that siding bridge or part of that bigger colossal project, there is still funding opportunities to address that second bridge. So that's one. Two, talking about revenue. So looking at where we are at the end of the year and having discussion with PPRTA staff on projected interest that could be included for our mid-year budget, I would anticipate a minimum of $5 million coming into the city's PPRTA capital program mid-year when we get to there. And then when we start looking at the table reserves for the end of, that would be available at the end of 24 for PPRTA 2 projects. I'm sorry, here are all reserves. The city would have over another $5 million coming for that. So we know from what we're looking at known revenues that are coming in that we would, or that the PPRTA has, that we'd have over $10 million coming back into our capital program. So I could replenish as needed, whether it's in this project or a couple other projects we have not bid yet.
Answer your question, Tony? Okay. Gail, how far, so from Peterson on Dublin, from Peterson up to Mark Shuffle, that's from about from the firehouse up, right?
Yes. Yeah.
How
really in the
far
area.
is that? Quarter mile?
I believe it's, I was thinking it was like 0.7 or 0.8 miles.
Okay,
I'll have phone a friend and get that for you, but I think it's just under a mile, as I recall.
okay. And you think that that won't raise any flags of not being part of Mark Shuffle, but a major connector to Mark Shuffle, that you're within the scope of what you're doing? Or
Well, really, it makes sense when you start looking at the drainage and the connection, what happens with that intersection. It makes
Yeah.
sense to make that it just one of the phases of construction, frankly. And talk about construction fatigue out in that area. Let's get it all done once, as opposed to getting Mark Shuffle done, waiting a few months to a year and then coming and doing Dublin. So
Yeah,
it's
that's-
always been higher in our priority. So it makes sense, as well as construction's going, to keep it going as a future phase. And also, they're both Mark Shuffle and Dublin are using some of the same water quality facilities. So it makes sense just to go through it and add those all together.
no dispute on it needs to be done. I was just making sure that when we have to answer questions that we're all on the
Right.
same. sheet.
Yeah,
So-
I would like to, we're trying to do it as efficiently, as effectively as possible, and get in and out of there and provide those improvements to the residents that are in that area.
Carlos?
Yeah, Carlos Perez, Colorado Springs CTAB. Question I have here, yeah, I have to concur that $10 million, does have that sticker shock effect. It's quite a bit of money. The project here is roadway safety. We know that's a PPRTA 2 capital A project. And, I had always kind of viewed that as the intent was like spot improvements, to things that are hot spots. So we got to go in there and fix those things. $10 million here is kind of going more for engineering work for a PPRTA 3 project. My question is that where does this stand in relation to the PPRTA 2 B list projects? I know we've worked on some B list projects, I think, for bridges, but it looks as though, we're kind of accelerating the development here of PPRTA 3 A list projects. And this seems to be prioritized over our PPRTA 2 B list projects. And $10 million could be a significant amount of money. We can probably complete some items on PPRTA 2 B list items. So I'm a little troubled by that. How would you answer that question?
Well, I would say if you go and look at the road, first of all, kind of the intersection improvement project, that is more focused point. And I think the really intent was probably for it to be more spot focused. But when we go and look at Mark Shuffle and Dublin both, it has systematic operational and safety problems all the way along that corridor. So it really applies with the overall intent of what that program was put in place for, one. And then two, when the PPRTA 2 list was put in place, we didn't have the traffic volumes out there that we see today. And so this has really emerged as a safety issue. So we feel like it's very important to get that addressed as quickly as possible, because frankly, it's one of our top priorities in the city when you look at safety and operational issues in that area. So it makes sense to make an adjustment to take your resource or financial resource and apply it the smartest way to address our biggest problem areas as possible and still fulfilling our commitments. I think that PPRTA has been very solid on that, is filling PPRTA commitments, and we're still committing to be able to do that as well. So I think it's the intent of both.
Yeah, that really didn't answer my question about specifically the B list, but I understand that, okay, we have safety improvements, and me, I'm actually a proponent of that. We should have safety should be the highest priority when it comes to our road construction projects. But we do have capital items, that are specific line items that are very specific on our B list here that will not get funded because we're putting this money into what is ostensibly a safety project that is going towards the design for PPRTA 3 projects. So it sounds as though, hey, we like the B list. It's a great list. However, it's been overcome by events. The traffic volumes, the population growth, and all the issues that we're having here. Safety needs to be the highest priority. So when this program was put together 10 years ago, we didn't foresee these kinds of issues come up. And therefore, we need to fund this project to cover some really serious operational issues. And sorry, B list, we're not going to fund you.
Go ahead, Brandy.
So one of the things that we've been discussing is defining when that A list is done and when that A list is complete and when that A list is funded. It's a question for Rick. Have we gotten to that point yet? I don't recall us getting to the point that we even been able to have the conversation that the A list is fully funded and we're on the B list. So, but before we entertain the B list and bring this into the conversation, I just wanted to make sure that we were or weren't there yet, and we've completely funded as defined by us in things that we've passed in this group that were there. Not to put you on the spot, Rick.
A two-part response. No, the CAC and the board have not declared that we're there, that all the A's are finished. We do have board policy 32 that provides a 7-step plan for how to define that. But no, we have not finalized that discussion. We have not said, we've not declared that all the A list is done and we're ready to go to the B.
So not to put a wrench in what you're going, because I completely understand where you're headed, but PPRTA 1, we had to finish all of A. PPRTA 2, we have to finish all of A. PPRTA 3, we have to finish all of A. So I think that's where we're stuck, is that we're having to talk about A-list projects over, 3 decades, and we're right at the cusp. We're ending one and we're starting another, and we're trying to find efficiencies with time and money. And I get that doesn't always look as pretty on paper as it needs to.
But I just heard Gail just say, we've already funded, all the A projects are going to get done. So I'm hearing two different messages here, but yes, I think officially we haven't declared victory, but in practice, it looks like we're going to be complete with the A project.
Well, let me
and
just add
projects.
something, and then Rick's gonna jump in and this is a challenge with program funds. And that you may not have spent all the money, but the organizations that own those project funds have to say, I'm done for this RTA 2. We had to do that for RTA 1. We had to say, even though I got money in that project's going to carry over, or it's going to get pooled or done something, somebody's got to declare we're done with projects in this program fund. And that's the part that I've raised a couple of times. I don't think we've made that decision yet. We've gotten, when you look at the schedules that both the county and the city have provided, they're projecting that they're going to complete either the design or constructions, and they've got the funds to do that on the cost they know about now for the remaining A-list projects. But in my mind, we have not really addressed policy-wise the program funds and how we determine what they are and when they're done. So I got the same concern to some degree. We haven't really finalized that in my mind. But Rick?
Follow-up is that the Mark Sheffield North project is a PPRTA 1 project.
Right.
It's not a PPRTA 2 project. It is a PPRTA 3 project. Of course, PPRTA 3 doesn't start for another 9 months. So it's, from my standpoint, it's just a prioritization. If the CAC and the board feel that additional adding more lanes and improving the safety of Mark Sheffield North is a priority, then go ahead and spend the city's program fund and do more work on it. If you don't feel it's a priority, then say no.
Real quick question.
All right, Tony, and then Gail.
Just as clarification, in PPRTA 1, it was an A-list project, wasn't it? Mark Sheffield?
Yes,
That's what I thought.
Gail.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to point out, and it's fortuitous that you have the quarterly report in your packets this month, but in my quarterly report, I do an update on the B list for PPRTA 2 every quarter. And there are 51 city name projects on there. 13 of them are complete and 3 are currently in stages of engineering. And those were completed either with program funds or other funding sources that were brought in to complete those projects. And they were accelerated based on need. And you see there's several bridge projects on there. And that's one of the benefits of having emergency bridge fund and this roadway safety and traffic operation fund, because there are things that arrive that we do need to address. And with almost 200 square miles and 6,400 lane miles of infrastructure in our city, there's things that, as much as we try to plan and get ahead of, that we do need to respond to. And I think what was included in the report and responding to the needs of Mark Sheffield and Dublin are important. And I think would be considered critical as citizens and still in the spirit of PPRT and doing what's right.
Rick?
I've just been informed that Karen Asplund has joined the meeting, so I'm sorry, Rich, you cannot vote now.
Okay, any further discussion on the line item transfer request by the city? Okay.
No, what I'd like to say is, I'm back when I was with the hack with the county, Mark Sheffield was a priority, then it got shifted to the city. I think from a safety standpoint that this is very appropriate. I'm definitely in favor of it. And I think the way you've laid it out, it explains it, very understandable, and I would vote for it.
Okay, so yes, Carlos?
Well, yeah, Carlos Perez, Carlos from CTAB. Yeah, I definitely support safety improvements, and it looks like, this definitely needs to get done. Where does, just my question here, board policy 31, is that being considered by the board of directors now, or is it on the agenda? I'm not sure where it is in the pipeline, but I know we have the policy, but as far as getting review, any kind of review when we declare victory, we're complete, getting that invoked, is that business item for the board right now? Is that being considered?
The board policy 32.
Or 32?
Defines the process to implement the definition of completely funded, that's been approved by the board.
I'm wondering if I was to make, and I'm just thinking out loud, if I would like to make a motion to support this line item transfer with a consideration by the board of directors to include discussion on board policy 32 to ensure that we have the right guidance when it comes to approving these kinds of line item transfers. So I'd like to see the board consider it. We can just approve the line item transfer as is, but seems like we are having that missing discussion, as Brandy brought up, that we probably want to put that on the front burner and make sure that there is clarification by myself on the CAC that we are following the direction from the board of directors when it comes to these kinds of projects that are now reaching into PPRTA 3.
Brandy?
Too. And this is just me going off of memory. As far as I recall, on board policy 32, when it begins to get implemented and looked at is when an entity comes forward to wants to declare that that has been done, and then all of the other entities have to go through the process to make sure it's happened. But as far as this entity doing that, that wouldn't be appropriate, because how it's written is that one of the governmental entities would have to say that they want it done in order for those steps to begin.
Excellent memory. Let me grab the fourth paragraph. If a member government is ready to move the B list, they shall confer with the other member governments to determine whether, et cetera. So the trigger, as Brandy just said, is a member government feeling that they, or calculating that they finished their A's and are ready to move the B's, and they want to bring it forward to the CAC and the board and share their calculation and their desire to pull the trigger to ask everybody to move to the B's. So that's the trigger, is a member government calculating that they have completed their A's and they want to present that to the CAC and board and declare that they're ready to move to the B list.
Does that make sense, Carla?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I
I'm just trying to
don't
think
want
of
this
this as,
body to do it, because we don't have the authority to do that.
yeah, but it seems like what I heard from the city of Colorado Springs, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gail, that we are done with the A list, as what I heard. We're not going to, this line item transfer will not put at risk any of the A list items. And so we are on track pretty much to be finished with the A list. And I just thought, is that trigger condition from what I heard satisfied? And if the answer is no, then maybe we just leave it as is. But I did hear, looks like, because that was one of the first questions, $10 million is not, it's a significant amount of money. Does it affect the A list? No, we're right on track to get it completed. So I keep wondering if those trigger conditions, it sounds as though those trigger conditions have been met, and maybe just word the motion in a way to have, not to put the city of Colorado Springs here on the spot, but to strongly consider looking at these triggers and seeing if and when those will be invoked. And that would be the wording of the motion. And I don't want to impose, like I said, extra stuff here. I do support this. I just want to make sure that this trigger does not get ignored. And again, going back to the B list, that it becomes overcome by events, because of the safety concerns we have over on Mark Shuffle, which are real. These are real issues.
Go ahead.
Okay, I want to make sure, I did not say that we were done or complete. I said that we anticipate things to be completely funded. And I talked about it's a well thought out plan we know we're going to have over $10 million of revenue coming in to replace those funds that we would be reusing today, or obligating today to reuse for an imminent issue. And then also talked about that siding bridge that we would have to do at the same time, that we could use emergency bridge funds and PPRTA 3 if we had to as well, to help support that project, because again, those two bridges need to be done. That siding bridge is an RTA 2 B-list project. So I feel like we've got a solid plan and a backup plan to be able to execute the intent or all the projects that are listed underneath the city of Colorado Springs for RTA 2.
All right, Larry.
Yeah, Carlos, really, and Rick can jump in and say something too if you'd like, but I have not seen any of the entities in PPRTA, as indicated like by Gail, that they have declared that their projects are completed for PPRTA 2. They are still all working on them and have not gotten to the definition that Rick indicated a couple minutes ago, as far as, they can declare that they are done to where they can move to the B list. There's been no advancement from any of the entities to that effect at this particular point. So I don't want to push any entity, saying that they are done, when in actuality, none of them have come forward and said that they are done.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Chair, yeah, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, it seems pretty persuasive, the arguments here for letting the city get their job done. We want to engineer it for them. And so with that, I'm in my position here on the CTAB, I'll just continue to monitor this. Looks like we have, a few more months. I don't know, what is it, 8 more months left on the PPRTA 2 or whatever. And just making sure we're doing this right within what the voters intended with PPRTA 2. With that, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we approve this request to our line item fund transfer in the amount of $10 million as presented.
Larry Tobias, I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the line item request as presented. Any further discussion? Not seeing any online or in the room. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
No,
Okay. Thanks, Ann. Motion carries.
I meant aye. Sorry.
All right. El Paso County.
Good afternoon, Josh Palmer, County Engineer. County has 4 contract items to bring before you today. The first one is a $4 million, not to exceed $4 million contract for our annual concrete maintenance program to HCD Inc. This is the first year of our multi-year contract with this contractor. And this would support our 24 concrete, or also referred to as our prep to pave efforts for our 24 maintenance program. The second is the official title of this is a railway grade crossing signal installation agreement to the BNSF Railway Company for $187,977. So this is for the Security Widefield and Fontaine intersection project. A little bit of context behind this. In 2019, when we began the design of this project, working with the Public Utility Commission, it was agreed that a reset of the preemption, which is the interface between our signal and the at-grade railway crossing for BNSF, could be accomplished with a reset. As we finished up design and got into construction in 2022, we did some further investigation and analysis and working with BNSF, and determined that reset wasn't possible because work that was performed CDOT performed in 2002 with the 85 Fontaine project essentially combined the interface in a single conduit with CDOT. So the county and CDOT were sharing the same conduit for the interface with the railway, and new railway criteria require that to be separated. So working with BNSF, essentially this is a contract to pay for equipment, materials, and for labor, because the railway didn't allow anybody to work on their components other than themselves. So we had to pay BNSF union wages to get this accomplished. So while it's titled a railway grade crossing installation agreement, it's only called that because that's what it's referred to in the 2002 agreement. There was an agreement between the county and the railway in 1974 that was kind of nullified with the work that the state did in 2002. So it's called an agreement because that's what it's referred to in 2002. It's essentially a PO for materials and labor to split the conduit and give the county a standalone separate conduit for that preemption interface. There's no long-term maintenance requirements or commitments. The county has been maintaining that equipment, the county's equipment, since 1974. So it's just confirming what we've already been doing for the last 50 years and calling it what it's referred to in 2002.
Okay, yeah. So I think you just kind of addressed the last sentence in your chart. Be on page 35 of our deal. The last sentence just said that the new agreement will separate preemption services from existing CDOT agreement and move control of service and maintenance to the county. And so that implied to me when I read that an ongoing maintenance of BNSF signals and this kind of stuff. So that's just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, so in 1974, that was already the agreement in 1974, and it was technically nullified when CDOT went in and made some improvements. That practically speaking, the county never stopped maintaining or stopped controlling. It was just a technicality that was over that kind of an oversight in 2002. So it's going back, codifying what we've already been doing since 1974.
Okay.
Yeah.
That answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final item, if I can scroll back up here, is a roadway improvement, a property acquisition request for $340,000 to Interstate 25 Properties Ltd. This is for a permanent easement, temporary easement, and right-of-way acquisition on the east side of Beacon Light Road. And this is for the Beacon Light Road project.
Will this finish Beacon Light Road?
This will, other than it'll finish the property acquisition. So the design is essentially complete. We've been waiting for the last two bits of property acquisition. There's this, and then there is the hopefully soon to be concluded friendly condemnation of the property on the north side of County Line Road, which is in a conservation easement with Douglas County. It's all been agreed to. It's just the lawyers crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and hopefully that happens soon because we're ready to go on the project. But this should be the last bit of right-of-way that we have any control over completion. And those are the three items that we have. I'm willing to answer any questions that you may have.
Josh, now this is both acquisition of right-of-way and easements. And so you're saying that this will complete all acquisition and easements except for that issue on the north side of County Line Road with Douglas County on the.
Correct, yes.
So, and then like you say, so it will be hopefully ready to go to bid as soon as that is completed with Douglas County.
That's correct.
Does that agreement have to be with both Douglas County and who has the conservation easement on that? Is it Douglas County or?
It's Douglas County, but I'm not a lawyer, so I don't completely understand it, but it's a conservation easement through Douglas County, but it's not a conservation easement with Douglas County. So Douglas County technically does not have complete control or oversight over the there's a conservation group that controls it, which is kind of a quasi governmental agency that works through Douglas County. If it was just Douglas County, I think we would have had this completed a year ago. But we had to bring in, because our county attorney's office didn't even have the relative expertise so we had to bring in a ringer to help us wade through the legal language. So yeah, the answer to your question is sort of.
But if you can get that signed, as Jim says, then you're ready to go with the project.
Yes, we are.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say congratulations. You managed to have an agreement with the railroad for under $200,000. I don't think I had any of those in Fountain. It's pretty exciting that you're getting that.
Well, they asked for 500,000 first, and we countered with 20,000. So this is where we landed.
That's good. That's good. You did a good job.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for the county or on their projects? Do I have a motion to approve the county's request as submitted?
So moved.
Tony, thank you. Anybody else?
David Zelenak, I'll second that.
Thank you, David. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you. And thanks for asking my question, Joshua. Okay, transit. Good afternoon.
Line Rail Transit Services Division Manager. In your packet is a information item for transit monthly report. We included January 2024 this year ridership information in there. However, as I mentioned before, to assess transit services ridership alone is not enough. We do look at efficiency, we look at on-time performance. So in your packet on page number 56, we included some examples of that. Under the transit highlight section, we included the items that we implemented during our last service change, fall 2023. Those went into effect on October 1st, 2023. So we broke those out to assess, we monitor the situation and see whether or not those are working as intended. I would like to point to two items. The first one is really the Route 20 addition. We added a new route between downtown bus terminal and Southgate on the weekend, really to address the on-time performance challenge that we have seen. On the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, that's on the next page, on page 57, you can see on Saturday for Route 20, prior to this Route 20 went in service, we were looking at 73% of on-time performance. And after this implementation, we're looking at 80%. Sunday, we saw similar situation for Route 11. The on-time performance significantly improved for Route 11 on Saturday from 63% to 81%. So those are the numbers we would like to see. It's working. However, there is one number that does not make sense to us. So we're looking into the situation and trying to find some answers. Going down the list, Route 34 bus stops. The VA reached out to us. They were adding a clinic at that intersection. So we added stops there. And by adding those stops, we were able to utilize signal prioritization. That's the first one we're using, testing in our system. Actually, if you scroll down on the same page, you will see Route 34. The on-time performance actually went down a little bit, probably because of we added more stops and the bus had to make one more stop there. But also we're running into some signal issues. So we are working with traffic engineering and trying to figure out what's going on. Sometimes the signal doesn't change as designed. Sometimes they're just not working as designed. So it's a good test. The first one we put in the system, let's work it out and see how we can move forward. So also going back to Route 20, I forgot to mention that with this Route 20 addition, we're able to achieve around 15-minute frequency on the corridor between Route 10, 11, and 20. So they all come in at different times. So people traveling from downtown terminal to Southgate are able to get on a bus, regardless of the route number, to get to Southgate. So those are some examples of the things that we monitor, and it's a report back on what we were able to implement. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Tony?
This is a question that I've thought about a number of times, and I'll just go ahead and ask it now. Do you guys have a calculation of approximately what the operational cost per revenue service hour is on the fixed route buses?
We do.
What do you know what that is?
For 2024, depending on whether it's big bus or smaller cutaway bus, we're looking at around $100,
okay,
give or take, for fixed route bus. Majority of that cost is for the operators, driver, fixed route operator cost, and also we include maintenance and fuel.
So with a boarding of 9.1 per revenue service hour, we're spending $11 per person getting on. And I mean, they're paying a couple dollars of that maybe, but on average.
On average.
All right, thank you, Lan. Any questions, other questions for Lan?
Mr. Chair, I just have one.
Oh, David?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I always appreciate your update. Well, one thing you brought up intrigued me though about the traffic signal issue as it relates to transit operations. Can you refresh my memory, maybe the group's memory? Is there a real live, some would call it dynamic connection between the location of each of the vehicles and the transit or the traffic control signal master, knowing where every bus is to allow preemption or priority is my question really? Or is your system kind of a 1960s system where the bus pulls up, the light may be red, it may be green, the system doesn't know where the bus is, so allowing no preemption or priority?
I have very preliminary knowledge on that, and I'll ask Todd for information or Gail's help. My understanding is there is a small equipment device inside the bus. When it approaches the bus stop, the signal will be able to get that signal and change the light. So the buses have prioritized green light to get through.
Yeah, I think it's pretty, if we have that technology, it would be the older technology that we really need to look at other options to make transit a priority when we get through our signals. And some of the signal pilots we're going to be doing this next year will have the latest technology that we should have better operational control to identify through transit and make it a priority. So, and again, we could ping Todd Frisbee, who actually manages that program, and get a little bit more information. So I think we're kind of there, but we're just baby steps, let's be honest. And we have a long ways to go to continue to improve that.
Is that going to also apply to emergency vehicles? You know, years ago, we
No, it
had,
does not apply to emergency vehicles.
because we had a system years ago that it worked that way. When they were approaching, it triggered the lights. But I think technology kind of outgrew what was there.
No, and right, the answer is no, we don't have that today. I will tell you that some of the technology that we're looking at is perception and adaption-based technology. And we haven't talked specifically about emergency vehicles, but we have talked about vulnerable users going through an intersection and controlling the timing to let them clear out that area. Or if there are no side street activities, that they would keep the green lights, the green basically longer on the priority road at that time. I would suspect the same technology could pick up emergency vehicles, but again, there's some of the nuances on some of these technologies we're looking at right now.
Thank you. David?
Thank you again very much. One final comment I'd like to offer, since I think this community, this region deserves arguably a world-class system. If there are resources that you're short of, I think this group, at least myself, I'd be willing to entertain upgrades, which would be PPRTA funded in the interest of reducing congestion, reducing travel times, air quality improvements, all the above. Rather than keep those beautiful buses sitting, waiting at a red light needlessly, when a small, relatively inexpensive upgrade and I'm not advocating preemption. That's where an emergency vehicle comes up and every light turns green every time in a preemption. I'm suggesting priority be given to a bus. If a bus has only one driver on it, there's no need for a priority there. If you've got 52 people standing on a bus and you're letting a little Kia zip through and the bus gets no priority, I think that's an easy remedy that technology can assist with. And if it's a shortage of resources, I'd be willing to entertain a discussion at some point in the future about allocating enough resource to upgrade your system.
Thank you.
How's that?
May I also just address that, if you don't mind, please? I appreciate PPRTA's support on this, and I agree there's definitely smarter ways to do this. I want to be cautious and let you know that we're taking a very methodical approach at looking at some of these new smart technologies to make sure when we're willing to make an investment or able to make an investment, because as you mentioned, it may be low cost, but it's low cost times 350 locations or 630 locations. So it does add up quite a bit. Make sure we're doing it with the right technology and in a phased approach that makes the most sense. So I just want to caution you that, so appreciate your support, but when we come to lay out a plan, I want to let you know that it's going to be very thought out and do it in pilots, most likely, to make sure the technology we're bringing really does what it says it's going to do.
All right, any other questions for Lan? Good discussion. Thank you, Lan. Okay, item 7B, Colorado Springs Monthly Change Order and Property Acquisition Report. It's information only. It's in your pat. Gail, you got anything you need to add?
No, I just want, if there's any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay. Likewise, City of Colorado Springs Powers North reimbursement update.
All right, Gail Sturdivant. This is also an information only item, but I did promise this last month. I knew we were getting close to be able to do it. So underneath a reimbursement agreement between City of Colorado Springs, El Paso County, PPRTA, and the Copper Ridge Metro District, Copper Ridge is incurring costs now for the first phase of that, which is the Voyager Bridge over Powers. We have had our first statement. We were able to close out with them, and you see the first 5 invoices associated with those statements listed on here. We'll just continue to add on as we get costs. But how this is laid out, you can see the total invoice costs and what is eligible for future PPRTA reimbursement underneath that agreement. So you have an idea of what that future liability will be. And then once we get the BNSF property purchased and finalized and everything's closed and we incur the costs, we'll have 1 or 2 on that as well, just to let you know exactly how we spent that money and for the future reimbursement. So any questions on this, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Okay, thank you, Gail. All right, we just did that one. 7D, El Paso County monthly change order. Josh, you got anything to order to yours?
Not particularly. The only thing on this report is for the property acquisition we just discussed for Beacon Light Road. So if there's any questions, I can answer those.
Any questions for Josh? All righty. Quarterly reports from member governments. Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These are the quarterly reports that are required by the comprehensive IGAs between the PPRTA and each of the member governments. They are submitted 50 days, plus or minus 50 days after the end of the calendar quarter. So the ones in your packet are for the 4th quarter of 2023. Information, be glad to take any questions.
A lot of effort goes into these, and I find them intriguing when people ask questions about a particular project. It's usually somewhere around my desk that I can go dig it up and try to find out what the latest status was. It works out well, but I can only imagine the amount of work that goes into doing this. So thank you all for doing that. Any questions on quarterly reports? All righty. Let's go to item number 8, report on recent board actions.
So the highlights here were the certificate of appreciation for departing PAC member Ann Nichols and her ceremonial PPRTA hard hat. Looking down the page, and the board's appointment of Tony to an at-large regular seat and Rick Hoover to an at-large alternate seat. So they are now back with us. And of course, I think most of the CAC members were attending, the joint meeting where the primary topic was EV chargers, where the board decided to not have a board policy regarding EV chargers. One item on future radar, sorry, is that we've just been notified in the past few days that City of Fountain would like to go to their voters again this November. As you know, they expressed an interest and we entertained them and assisted them to the degree that we can, within law, for them to advocate to their voters to join the PPRTA. They did schedule it and had a vote last November, and their voters turned it down. I can't remember the exact margin. It was probably roughly, unless anybody has a better memory, roughly 54-46 or somewhere in that neighborhood of a denial. But the city council would like to pull the trigger and start that same process again this year with the goal of going to their voters this coming November. And when we asked the PPRTA attorney to put together the timetable, one of the things we discovered is that the CAC meeting in January of 2025, the first Wednesday, is January 1st, which is a holiday for most people. So wanted to ask you if, and give you the pros and cons of either moving the CAC meeting to December 31st, which of course would be New Year's Eve day. So that's not optimal. But if you move it to the 2nd, which is a Thursday, that's normally the day we try to get the board packet out, which means the board packet would go out on Friday, the 3rd of January, 2025. So the lesser of the evils probably is to, well, why don't I throw it out for discussion? Do you want to meet on New Year's Eve day, December 31st of 24, or do you want to meet on January 2nd?
Only if we do it at 8 in the morning on January 2nd. Just easy.
Can it be virtual?
At 8?
Yeah.
I'm not sure my TV knows how to turn on, is it?
Could we bump that to the next week or something? I think a lot of us may be.
Sure,
still
yeah,
out of
check your
town.
calendars and we'll talk about it next week, next month.
And
Oh, the next week, because the board, the board meets the next,
Right.
the board meets on the 8th.
Just trying to keep the
Can-
board meeting on schedule, so.
Mm.
we
I
would
was
need
going to
that.
say, can you move both of them?
Yeah.
Conceivably, yes.
Yeah, trying to rearrange city council and county
Yeah.
commissioners' calendars
You won't
is,
be able to do that with the utilities board meetings
Okay,
because they're the after
Yeah.
22nd.
well, why doesn't, how about if everybody checks their calendars and let's put it on the agenda for next month?
okay? It's good.
Thursday it is.
As Rick mentioned, I'd just like to thank all of you that took the time to come back down for that joint meeting after the board. Holly stopped in earlier and said she doesn't like having board meetings on controversial subjects. So, but anyway, I think good discussion, and it gave you guys and them an opportunity to see each other. And so I just, again, thanks for those that came down. Appreciate that. And that participated online. All right. Item 8B, annual report to the citizens.
So we we finally met our norm or our optimal schedule by having it on the March CAC and board cycle. Normally it there's some hiccups and speed bumps, and it's on April, but we're pleased to get it to you on our optimal timing. So it has a few typos that I want to share with you, and then Rick Hoover and Tony are on the CAC's Public Outreach Subcommittee, and Rick Hoover had several comments, and of course, Rick, you can participate in the discussion as the other alternates who can't, Russ and Rich. But on page 3, we found a typo in the lower left corner. Transit, we don't give transit 118 million. It's just 18,356,000. Also in also in the top right, the top right, the transit 18 million is actually 15,494,060 because that one is just the net revenue, not including fare box revenue and at the lower left. So it's the top right, the 18,356 is really 15,494,060, and at the bottom is the 18,356,193. So that was one typo. Page 40 in the Calhan line 3, it says we're able to overlay several few roads. So I took it upon myself to delete the word few. Cindy, feel free to jump in and disagree with me, but I think you'd prefer several roads instead of several few roads.
I would agree.
And Cindy, was that you?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yes, this Cindy and I agree.
Okay. Let's see. And so Rick Hoover, it's your turn if you want to bring up any of your other items. Oh, I'm sorry, Rick, before you go, Ann Esch's, the M in the MS period for Ann Esch, we've made that correction as well. It's not in the version you have, but it's in our evolving draft. So Rick, your turn.
Well, the only thing that I know what you covered.
Turn your mic on, Rick, please.
No. The only thing that you didn't cover was the one where I suggested that because everybody seems to worry about what we do with their tax dollars. If you look down through the city, there's a lot of them that says it came under budget and funds were reallocated. And I thought that was a pretty positive point, and suggested perhaps it could be bolded, bold print, or maybe a yet red color or something like that. Rick didn't see the issue, so I will follow his lead. If you have any thoughts on it, I'd be happy to entertain them.
One example, two examples are pages 13 and 16. For example, on page 13, the very last line, remaining budget of 586,393 has been reallocated. So, and that's repeated several times. So, the Rick Hoover's suggestion is that wherever these words appear, that there be some kind of highlight.
Would adding the word within the program clarify that any?
No, I wouldn't look at it from that standpoint. It's just such a positive thing that the city and the contractors for the city are doing all this work, and they're doing it below budget before they, and the fact that we're not going out and spending extra money, but that we're saving money for the taxpayer, and we're able to. You gave us $1 million and we only spent 750,000 of it. That ought to be shown as a positive, and it ought to be emphasized in the report. I think it's not that big of an issue as far as I'm concerned. It was just a thought on my part.
Tony?
I think I agree with Rick that Rick that it's not necessary, because if we're going to do that, I think we would almost have to go through and put well, this one went over budget and this one went over budget and this one went over budget. Oh, but this one we didn't, you know, so, and I don't. Balancing the positives and negatives is important if we're going to really throw out the positives big time. And I don't think that's necessary.
All right, any other comments or suggestions? I'm neutral on it. Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy.
I have another item on page 40
Okay,
on the Rayma maintenance project. The second sentence, the town working on a drainage project and hope to be done in early 2024. Yes, please.
Cindy, you want to add is that the town is working?
Sure. Sorry, I didn't notice it. Yes, is working. You know, such a long report, I just lost myself in there, so.
You lost your train of thought in the third sentence, is it?
I did. Yes.
All right, good catch, Kathy, thanks. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chair, no comments or questions on this. I think it's a great report, as always. I did have one maybe a format question about the approval and minutes for the joint meeting. Is that something that we need to approve here? Does the board approve those? Because it's a joint meeting. Do we have a say in minutes from the EV meeting we had, the special meeting a few weeks ago? Just wondering how that works in terms of your process.
If you would like CAC minutes, I can prepare those for the next month. That they are on the board agenda. It'd be a one pager, so it'd be brief like the board's is, but if you'd like that, I could do that.
You know, I think just since it's been a joint meeting of the two groups, maybe include that in next month's agenda. I don't know if we need to approve those or not, or again, how that works.
Will do.
If
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
appropriate.
I'm okay with that, just so we got it on record that we discussed it and had a joint meeting on it.
Yeah, just so it appears in the PPRTA CAC
Right.
History for the future.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the annual report? All right, we need to make a recommendation to the board to accept the report as amended and discussed, and I guess Rick's got a few others. Or everything's, all your amendments are discussed. We got, okay.
Yes, and I think we've covered the four.
Okay. Do I have a motion to make a recommendation to the board?
I
Sorry?
recommend that the board approve the annual report.
Okay, do I have a second?
Larry Tobias, second.
Okay, thank you. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, good job. Another great report. We've got a good story to tell. All right, item number 8C, request for Roaring Fork Transportation Authority support. So Rick, you want to give us a lead in on this?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. The other four larger RTAs in the state, Roaring Forks RTA, Eagle Valley Transportation Authority, Gunnison Valley, and San Miguel Authority for Regional Transportation, all serve tourist destinations. Such as Aspen, Vail, Crested Butte, and Telluride. Roaring Forks, several years ago, they were first established in 2000, and they realized early on that due to the high cost of housing, since they are predominantly, if not totally, a mass transit bus system, that to get bus drivers and the volume, the quantity that they need, they were gonna need to provide some sort of subsidized housing for the bus drivers, which they did via, at 2022, they purchased a former 42 unit motel and have been using it as studio apartments for its bus drivers. Recently, they wanted to, they hired a contractor to renovate the former 42 unit motel for the bus drivers. And they were assuming that because they owned they were a regional government who owned this former motel, that it would not be subject to the standard sales tax through the Department of Revenue on the building materials for the renovation. So when they worked up the bid specs and conducted the bid for a contractor to do the renovation, they did not include sales tax as an expense in the bid documents or the contract with the construction contractor for the renovation. Recently, they've been informed by the Department of Revenue that the state was or is going to require a standard state use tax on the building materials. And according to the CEO of Roaring Forks Transit Authority, that would be about $125,000. So they have, the Roaring Forks has appealed to DOR to reverse that ruling. And I haven't heard the results of that appeal. And they're also requesting that the other RTAs in the state show some degree of support, letters or other mechanisms to show support for Roaring Forks request for its appeal to DOR, and even possibility of a bill in the current state legislature to provide that employee housing owned by an RTA would be exempt from sales tax for the use tax for any building materials. So that's where we are. So I'll that's a summary. If you have any questions, this was brought up to the board chair and vice chair, and they said it should go to the board, and we had that in sufficient timing to put it in the CAC packet for today to see what you want to do with this. Do you want to recommend to the board that the board support Roaring Forks, oppose, abstain, or something else? Be glad to take any questions.
Brandy had her hand up first.
Thank you. Eventually, Tony's gonna get his degree and I can run all this by him first, right, before I bring up all of my questions, concerns. I'm not gonna point out the errors in the letter written by the general counsel because we don't have time for that in this meeting, but it's definitely been fun to follow all of this. If you look at page 216, and I'm mostly gonna point to Tony, where it states what this entity could and could not do. It said that the purpose of the authority is to finance, construct, operate, and maintain an efficient, sustainable, and regional multimodal transportation system. Well, in my personal opinion, housing does not fall under that definition. But that doesn't mean they didn't go and buy housing. So now they own housing. So now they are a governmental entity that own housing. So then if you follow the law that they broke the first one in my humble opinion, but we'd need a court to determine that. Now, I can't believe the Department of Revenue is making them pay sales tax when they got to the point that if you wanted them to, not break the first law, don't let them buy the housing. So in 2022, somebody should have gone to their attorneys and said, is this under our capacity? And I think that's where the problem lies. And I inherently do not want transportation entities owning housing because I think that's a bigger problem. And if there's any way that we could interject a voucher system into this law that they want to bring forward, that instead of building, buying and operating housing, if they're wanting to subsidize how we get to the finish line, which is having people operate buses, then create a voucher system, create something, create a public-private partnership. But I don't want to get to the point that Gail and Lan are running and operating housing within this region, let alone any region. So it's all yours, Tony.
Well, they've owned it since 2000, so they've had the housing for 20 plus years.
This one is a new one though. So the one that we're discussing today, they bought in 2022. So we're not talking about, you're right, they've been doing this forever, but the one in question is a recent addition.
I honestly hadn't even thought about those issues on whether they should own it at all. But knowing that the legislature keeps saying that they're in favor of making housing in the state more affordable, I think that because we're already in the situation where they own it and that is the goal of this, that we should support it. I do agree with Brandy that a voucher system would probably be better, or, just pay their people more because that's the going rate in that area. But that's, this is it would take a lot. I know. And of course, all the resorts have the exact same problem up there. They can't afford, the people who work at the resorts can't afford to live anywhere near the resorts. So this is just another one of those problems that if we are serious about affordable housing, the legislature should be getting on that. And I think we should support their trying to get out of the $125,000 in tax.
Any other thoughts?
Mr. Chair, yeah, of course, I always have thoughts or questions, actually. It sounds like, if I understand it correctly, is this a legal determination? We really can't weigh in on a legal question, or the question here is to just support the change to law or to appeal it? Is this a gray area in the sales and use tax that is in dispute and that we are weighing in a place that the state law is not clear in this? I'm not sure, but if it's a legal question, I don't know what more we can say about this.
Go ahead, Gail.
I just wanted to maybe break it down simple. I almost need a whiteboard. And Brandy, correct me if I get this wrong, but Roaring Forks is appealing a decision made by the legislature. I'm sorry, Department of Revenue. And they're just asking for PPRTA to give them a letter of support to go against the Department of Revenue.
Right. And the other RTAs have done that.
Yes, but I think as Rick pointed out, the other RTs are in a different position than us.
Seems like we should support it. I mean, let me go back to this question of Brandy, and, let me interject here. I know that, I work in technology. I used in my analysis here, the substitution principle. If we had robot facilities operating the bus, that would be in scope, but human beings are not. And that troubles me because right now we need people to operate the buses. But if we were to get robots to do the same job, then somehow that'd be okay. So I'm just thinking that right now, people are operating these buses, and just like a fire station houses firemen, and municipalities pay for the housing of firemen to staff a firehouse. I see that as kind of the same thing here. And until we replace people with robots, we're going to have to provide. There's going to be a role, I think, for government to provide housing, just like we do with fire stations.
Well, and I thought about that, and the RTA is, in my book, is a quasi-government and not like another. So what's the difference between Vail Resorts having a dorm for their staff, like many of the ski resorts do as a private business, providing assistance to people that provide a service to them, and ultimately we go do. I kind of group it in that category when I read it, was that the Department of Division of Wildlife augmented and supplemented housing in up in this area for these technicians that worked in the fisheries because you couldn't afford, the salaries were so low, they couldn't afford to live there. So this is a common issue in these areas where these transit areas are working. And it's not like the city or something providing housing, in my opinion. And so they're independently run. I'm assuming, I don't know, Rick, do you, whether they have a board of directors, because the guy signs a letter as a CEO. But I didn't see it as a government agency. So then it brings the question, if you're not a government agency quasi, then why wouldn't you pay the taxes? So, I mean, I kind of looked at it from that perspective, but that's just my opinion.
Do we know, are the RTAs in these areas typically tax exempt on what they're providing because it is a public service, the public transit?
I don't know that, sorry.
Okay,
And
I think that's
by
an
the way,
important
Rich, you can
question.
vote now.
I think that's an important question because if they are, then this should fall under that same thing. If they're not, then pay your taxes.
So the question to us is there anything wrong with supporting them in their fight? That's really the issue. Unless the state's going to come back on us and try to pick on and say, all you guys got together, we're going to find a way to mess with you. So no, but no, they won't do it. But so that's the question. Yeah. Yes.
Mr. Chair, just a heads up, Craig Gooding.
Oh, okay, Craig, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't see, frankly, any downside to supporting them in their request. I do feel like it's a loser that they're not going, at least through the DOR, that they're not going to win. The one thing that jumped off at me, there's a couple places where they stated that they assumed that they would not be responsible for the taxes. And I know we have all had heated discussions with people in position of authority. And one thing that's got its 0% success rate with me is saying that I proceeded under the assumption that my interpretation was correct. I feel like they kind of dropped the ball here. They're going to have to get some relief through, I think, the political and legislative process rather than through the administrative process. But again, I don't have a problem with the actual idea of the RTA operating housing. I think we're coming to that point in a lot of things. So I'm okay with doing it. I just think we need to keep our eyes open in terms of what we expect the effect to be.
Anybody else? So is there a nomination from someone to yay or nay?
Mr. Chair, I would move that we recommend to the board that we do write a letter in support of the RFTA in their battle with the Department of Revenue. Yeah, that's it.
Carlos Perez, Colorado Springs CTAB. I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So let's try a voice vote. Wait a minute, Rick, yes?
With Kathy Heisey leaving, both Rick Hoover and Rich can now vote.
Okay. So let's start with a voice vote first and see where it goes. So all those in favor of making a recommendation to support Roaring Fork, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
So you got 2 nays. Okay, yes, I just kind of would like to know what your thinking is so I can explain it to the board because they will ask.
So, correct, back in 2000, they did own housing, but as they went through the exercise to become that new entity, they agreed to abide by the rules that were there, and the rules that were there don't include housing. They include transportation and infrastructure, I'll read it again, just so you have it. Regional multimodal transportation system. I guess at the point that housing becomes part of the system, we are gonna have a bigger conversation, and we will get into the notion of robots versus non-robots. But those are the rules that they agreed to follow back in 2000. They bought this in 2022. So with those rules in place, the problem was that they didn't abide by the rules that they agreed to in the first place. I think they are a governmental entity. I think they should be tax exempt for those rules, but because they broke the first rule, I don't think they should be allowed to get away with the second.
Okay, who else was Nate? Do you want to add anything?
That was me, Jim.
Okay.
Very similar to what Brandy said. Basically, I think it's, I don't feel like they really have a leg to stand on. It seems pretty clear to me that they messed up.
Okay. All right. Well, the motion carries to make a recommendation. And I will, in my brief to the board next week, I'll cover both Craig and Brandy's comments as I make that report. Rick?
With 17 voting members, can we assume it's 15-2, or were there any abstentions? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't vote either. I didn't vote.
We got 3 abstentions.
Yeah.
Okay.
You didn't vote, so there's 4 abstentions. 10-4.
Would that be 11-4 and 2, or 11-2 and 4? But 11-2 with 4 abstentions. Is that right? That's 17,
right? Yes, sir.
I just have, which I have a clarification for, other boards I've been on. Abstentions are really required only when you have a conflict. Do we have a policy for you can randomly not vote on an issue just because you don't want to? It seems kind of strange and pretty much in violation of any standard Robert Rules of Order.
We do abide by, and the CAC and the board have both adopted Robert's rules. I'd have to research that. We probably need a 10 or 15-minute recess, but in the 19 years, there's never been a board or a CAC discussion or rule on abstentions. Normally it's for conflict, but if someone just chooses not to vote, there's not been a discussion pro or con on a policy on that. And I'd have to take a significant time out to research that and read my Robert's rules.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting we delay this one, but maybe that would be something to look into for the future, because I think it is, to me, it's strange that you can just come to represent a entity and then say, oh, I'm not going to vote on this one. I'll vote on that one. That's bizarre to me.
Yeah, Alan, I think that, when we rarely get to a situation where we have to do an actual count because a voice vote carries. So you don't know who votes and who doesn't vote. Kind of a majority thing, and there are no nays. So, but your point is taken. So,
I'll be glad to research that and have it for the next monthly meeting.
Okay. Thanks, Rick. All right.
If I could speak up on that, this is Cindy. We don't, for my town boards, if they want to abstain, they have to give a reason. So again, we don't let people abstain just because they don't want to vote on an issue, because controversial issues, we need the whole board to vote. So that's a rule, and CML actually, or CIRSA, our insurance company, has said the same thing. So yes, check Robert's rules, but we don't allow it without a reason.
Okay. We'll have that discussion at the next meeting. Rick, do the research on that, and a good point. Okay. Agenda topics for next meeting. Rick, you brought up one on the abstention, and what else?
January 1st, 2025.
Oh yeah.
And the minutes from the CAC portion of the joint meeting.
Okay. Anything else, anybody? And any, all right, do we want to hear from Transit on their purchase of apartments for the bus drivers once she's bringing? No. Any communications from any of the members, anything you want to share with anybody? All right, without seeing any then we'll call the meeting adjourned and thank you all for your time and participation.